There we go. Go ahead.
Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very healing to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not in our time zone can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Joe, for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you, Joe. And I just wanted to remind everybody to put your name, where you're from, if you're an affiliate leader, caring listener, or if you're on the board, in the chat box so that we can recognize you as well. And I'll just quickly read Joe's bio, but I know that a lot of you were here last time. Joe Higgins is an Amazon best-selling author, medium, spiritual teacher, and intuitive counselor. He has had the ability to communicate with those who have passed on since an early age. Joe has completed and taught classes in mediumship and advanced mediumship, as well as becoming a certified Reiki Master. He has completed the Morris Pratt Institute training and a residential course in Pastoral Skills in Lilydale, New York. Joseph Higgins is he has written 5 books, including his latest, Always Connected, for those who have lost children. Children Give Signs and Insights from Heaven. This book discusses some of the most difficult questions a parent can have concerning the loss of a child. Mr. Higgins has become a leading authority on signs. Please visit his website, www.joehiggins.com. I'll put that in the chat box. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Joe Higgins.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're
and
very
thank you,
welcome.
Irene, for having me back. We had a wonderful time last time, and we got to answer a lot of questions. So what we're going to do tonight is I'll talk a little bit about signs, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about the Parents Book of Lost Children. And you guys can ask as many questions as we can get in, and so we'll just kind of let it flow that way. But I thought it was really important to talk about signs tonight at the beginning, because I try to incorporate sign stories into all my books, and I think it's extremely important for the fact that it can give us a sense of the bigger picture and how love continues after the transition that we call a death, and that life obviously continues on. But it's also important because over 90 million people have gotten some types of signs from their loved ones after they've passed over. And it's important for all of us to share these signs with other people, to let them know that, they're not making it up in their head, they're not going crazy. I had a friend of mine who's a widow, and she thought when her husband was sending her signs that she was going kind of crazy. So I named a chapter after her, No, I'm Not Going Crazy. I think it was a chapter 2 in the first book on signs, because she started talking to her other friends that were widows, and they were having the same experiences. And once they got together and started talking about these signs, I saw the healing that it started to bring. And it was the fact that these women didn't feel like they were alone and isolated with these possible connections. So that's why I think it's really important to share the sign stories throughout the books, especially a book on children, because children have a way of sending the best signs. They're just really good at it. And and they like to gang up on a parent sometimes too, so they can get really kind of intricate with their signs. And so it's important for, for people that have lost children to share those signs with other people that might be on the fence about, is there an afterlife, or there might be a lot of doubt going on. We all have doubt, that slips into our lives a lot. But the more that you read about some of these experiences that other mothers and fathers and parents are having, the more it sinks in, like, what's going on here. It's like these stories are incredible, and sometimes you just need a pick me up. So sometimes you can grab one of the books and you can just go through some of the sign stories, and you can just say, you might have read the same one 3 or 4 times, and it might be someone you don't even know, and you might be, wow, that is like really cool. That's like a wow story. And it just gives you that reinforcement that the kids aren't gone. The kids are still around. They're still interacting in your lives. And some people say, well, I don't get signs, and sometimes this, sometimes that. Well, sometimes there's some ground rules that I'm going to go over right now about signs and how they kind of like, how they go about doing it and how they work and stuff. So that I know a lot of you guys already know a lot about it, but I think going over some of the foundations of how they work is really important for those that don't, and it reinforces the stuff that you guys already know. The first thing is, if you want a sign, ask for it. By asking for a sign, what's going to happen is you're inviting in their energy to make contact with you. Don't put any conditions on it, please. I've actually had people say, oh, I want a sign, but not next week because I'm going to Disney World with my family, and we're going to be really busy. So, I mean, could it be like the week after? And this one is telling me this, and I'm laughing inside, and I'm like, oh my God, should I tell the people on the other side to get their scheduler out? And I told her, and then once she kind of understood it, she started to laugh, and she's like, oh yeah, I guess they kind of can pick the time the best. I'm like, yeah, I think they'll figure it out. They know a lot more about this than us. So, so just put the invitation out, and you send it with love, obviously, and let them decide when, where, and how. Okay, you can give them suggestions, and they will take those suggestions. They will take them, and perhaps they'll integrate them when it's time for you to get a sign. When someone passes over originally and they're met on the other side, one of the first things, I mean, there's a few things that go on at once, but one of the earlier things they do is they decide, the loved one, their guides, other people around them that work with them, if a sign's going to be given back to our side. And that depends on, first of all, they decide, will a sign be sent? Who will get the sign? When will they get the sign? How they will get the sign? They're going to go through all that. It's kind of like there is a process. It's just not willy-nilly. Sometimes it is, and that's why sometimes people might get a sign that overwhelms them, because sometimes on the other side they just get so anxious, like, oh, and they just want to blurt it out, and it's like, at the wrong time, and it might disturb someone. And the last thing they want to do is give a sign to someone on our side that's going to make them make their grief worse, or give them anxiety, or to make them sad, not happy sad, but just like kind of like a bad sad. So they won't send a sign if they think when you receive it, it's going to cause you some type of distress. So that's one of the reasons why people might not get signs certain times during their life. Okay. And we all go through it. So it's the same thing that, it'd be difficult for one of my loved ones to come through and give me a sign if, I'm stuck in the middle of traffic for like 3 hours, and, I'm going crazy because I'm late for something, and that wouldn't be a good time to send a sign. So they wouldn't. So what they're going to do is, this is a great analogy of how they do it. They look at the person who had passed, and they're going to go through a lot of experiences that person has had. It's like walking down the aisle in a grocery store, and you're looking at cereal, you're looking at bread, you're looking at eggs, except when they walk down the aisle, they're looking at memories, interactions, funny times, all these things that they can possibly use to grab your attention. It might be shared locations, it might be a vacation, it might be a feeling you had when a child was very small that you might think, oh, the child doesn't remember this memory. They didn't remember it when they were here, but on the other side, they remember it. So they'll pull out all these things, some way of getting your attention. So that's how they kind of figure out what's going to work best for you. Now, there are a lot of common signs out there that we have, and the usual signs. You get the numbers, you get cardinals, you get manipulation of electricity, voices, smells, scents, all sorts of things. And kids use them all, and sometimes they use them all in one sign too. So they will sometimes go with one of the staples, and it's like 20 or 30 of them. And sometimes they'll be very specific to an occasion, a passing, a birthday, holidays. They know when there's certain times around the year when we're more open or hopeful for a sign, and they're aware of that. So they will try to tap in, and sometimes they can be subtle, and sometimes they can be wow. And I know Elizabeth and I were talking before, and she was talking about was it your son that comes through it and heard the voice? Oh, no, that was the manner of how he talked, right?
Yes, he
So,
comes through with the voice. Yeah, but lots of parents have told me about that as well.
yeah, and I would just want to read one of the sign stories that I had on the voice, because it's just a great example of one of the more obvious ways a sign can come through. And like Elizabeth just said, a lot of times you guys will hear voices, out of the blue. Okay, this is from Kobe's mom, and she might even be in here today. I don't know, because I've gotten a lot of these stories from your organization, as well as other people, individuals, and other organizations. And I thank you for sharing them, because it brings so much healing to people that read about these. Because even if you have not got a sign, it doesn't mean that, this is the end of life and that's it. You can get healing just listening to other people, some of the signs that they've received. And so that by sharing them, you can see, something, there really is something else going on. There's a bigger picture, and life goes on. Even though maybe I haven't gotten a sign recently or even yet, these other people are getting signs, so that means it's possible. And that's what opens up hope, and that's what opens up the possibility of seeing the bigger picture, and it can bring you a little bit of healing and some comfort. 14 months after my son Kobe was killed on a motorcycle by a reckless motorist, I was driving in my car and thinking about the cardinal ornament I had ordered to put on his memorial tree. It was planted in the neighborhood at the home where he grew up. It was a small lake, and he loved the lake, he loved nature. A voice came into my head loud and clear, and I knew instantly it was Kobe. The voice said, "Mom, I'm here with you," over and over, as if someone had left a bunch of messages on an answering machine, and I had pressed play. I was sobbing at my way to the meet clients for work, and I had to pull over to get myself together. I spent about 3 hours with them, and then got in my car for an hour ride back to my home. Again, I heard the voice. This time it said, "I'm okay, Mom," about 4 times. It's interesting that the kids always repeat themselves, like we're not going to hear it the second time, it's this is where they are. It's like 4 times. I can get that. I believe I had small signs since its passing, but I doubted them and thought there were always an explanation. But this time I knew. Here's a perfect example about having our doubt. We're human. We have these doubts. So sometimes they got to come back to us, and repeat them over and over. And that's another reason why we share the signs, to get rid of that doubt. Only one other time in my life did I have that voice in my head. It was shortly after my dad passed away about 6 years ago. At about 3:30 in the morning, the voice in my head said, "Go look in the garage." I tried to ignore it because I didn't want to get out of bed, but it was persistent. So I got up, went downstairs, and opened the garage door. There was a strange light on in the garage. I was confused. I looked around, and there was an old night light that had not worked in a decade, but was still plugged into an outlet. I knew immediately that my dad had sent me a sign and thanked him. The light stayed on for 2 nights, then it went off. I live alone, so there was no chance that anyone else had touched it. So that's another example of someone using a voice. So it's not uncommon. It's not as common as some of the other signs, but if you do hear it, you're not going crazy. It's them trying to tap in and get your attention. Sometimes they'll do it in dreams, and they'll talk to you in dreams. Dreams are the number one way for them to come through, because a lot of your daily chaos, as I want to put it, is quieted down by then. So it's easier for them to come through, as opposed to if you're super busy and you're bringing the other kids to soccer practice, or you got 10 things going on once and you're juggling things. So they might just try to come through your dreams. So that's really, really important that you allow that. If you start to get connections through your dreams, I recommend that you keep a journal. I would keep a signed journal anyway. And that way you can look back at it later on in life, or when you're on vacation or doing something else, and you can look at certain times when the contact was made. I think it's a nice memento, but it's also reinforcing the sign. And that's one of the things that they like to have, is the reinforcement of the sign. I just want to read a quick thing on group signs, because we hadn't talked about that in the last session, how important it is when they send us signs as a group. And this is a perfect example in this type of organization. When you guys meet and stuff, it wouldn't be, actually, when you guys like meeting in person and stuff like that, the energy must be incredible, because all the kids are probably coming through trying to show you signs because they're showing off for other people. So they say, "Did you see that? I saw that." And it's a shared group sign. It becomes more powerful. You guys talk about it. It makes you smile. There's nothing better than sharing. So they will share the sign. Sometimes individual sign connections are more important to the person who's receiving them. At other times, groups are used in order to magnify that sign. By magnifying the sign, more people are able to understand, learn, and appreciate the sign. That's really important, because you might have someone in a group setting who witnesses a sign, who might be on the fence about, is this really true, or are we just kind of making this stuff up? But when they see the reaction of other people that have witnessed the sign, they quickly realize, wait a minute, all these people, they believe it, they saw it, I saw it, it can't be my imagination. And it pushes them a little bit more into the group thinking like, wow, there is a bigger picture to life. And that's one of the main reasons why they do groups, because there's always a few individuals in those groups that are just not sure. And it's our job to show them that we've got the signs too. And it's not a pushy way to do it either, because it's kind of all like, hey, we're all here at this table, we all saw it. So it's a non-pushy way to do it. As to the how, it's a matter of tapping into the subconscious of each individual and syncing them up together into one wave of thought. It is similar on your plane to a loud noise attract the attention of many strangers. A foghorn may alert sailors on the water, but also those on the coastline. The meaning might be similar, but more acute for the sailor than someone safe on the shore. So you can be in a group setting, get a group sign, and people that are, let's say you were in a convention and the waiters are walking around and you guys get a sign, you all get it. But the people, the waiters and stuff might not get it because they're kind of out of the loop, and it was meant for you guys and not them, okay? You know, like the lights going on and off. How many times have we been at a convention and all of a sudden, you know, the lights are off and someone's looking, and it's like, no one's over there at the lights. And so we all have a laugh. And but the people running the hotel have no idea what's going on, you know, but we do. When a sign is given to many people at once, we will use the abilities of everyone to recognize that particular sign. All those who are included will be connected in one particular subject matter. That's important too. So what they're going to do is, in a group sign, they're not going to send everyone a different subject matter sign. It's going to be one sign that everyone recognizes, so that you can share it together. Otherwise, it'd be like chaos. Sometimes one individual may or may not understand the sign, while with a group, the chances of successful acceptance is greater due to the amount of people that will witness it. And we had just talked about that. Different signs to many people could create confusion. So it is best at times to send one sign to a group in order for the misunderstanding to be limited. Now, it doesn't have to be a huge giant group like at a convention. It could be at a funeral, it could be at a memorial service, it could be at Christmas, a cookout, a birthday. It could be 2 people, or it could be 100 people. It's still a shared sign. And when that happens, they want you to talk about it. It's not to keep to yourself, it's to share. That's why they call it sharing. So that's important. Even if it's just 2 of you, share it. If it's 100 people, share it more, because that is the deal. That's they want to get this information out. They want to bring relief to people, understanding, healing. And there's no way better to share love than to share anything. You know what I mean? If you're sharing from your heart, which talking about personal signs is absolutely from the heart, then it's on a very high level of vibration, and it's all good to go, as they say. So
we have a lot of questions.
Let's
Can I start with some of the questions? First of all, I just want to say that group signs are fabulous, and we get so many group signs, especially when we're physically together as a group. And what we understand from a lot of the parents who are psychic or mediums, they see these kids high-fiving each other every time that they see us smile, because that's their goal. Is as a group, they're trying to get us to smile. And it is so much fun, because it's true that sometimes you can be in a group with a bunch of people and one parent is getting this sign, and we all recognize it because we know that child, and it's so fabulous to share that together. One other thing that I want to say along those lines too is that don't share these signs with people you know are not going to believe you, or who are going to poo-poo the signs, because it's going to make you sad. It's going to make you feel like that they might not have actually happened, but we know that they did. So don't waste time doing that, because it's going to get you discouraged. Wouldn't you say that, Joe?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the big reasons for shared signs, is because you might take someone that doesn't believe it, and that might, you know, try to dismiss it to an individual. But when they're in a group setting, it's kind of like they're overwhelmed. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got 10 people at the table, 9 of them are all, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm the one that's wrong, you know. And I think that's why they use the group. Yeah, don't go one-on-one with someone like that, because it's hard for them to understand. And sometimes they're not ready. You know, they're not ready at different levels and stuff. And you just,
well, I'm actually talking just about family and friends who are not in the same situation that we are. If it's another parent, I think it's fun to share these signs and say what's happening, because actually it'll make them realize that what they're seeing is real. But then if it's family and friends and they don't really understand why we're still dwelling on the fact that we like communicating with our kids and we enjoy being able to get these things, and why don't we move on? So that's the people that I'm talking about. We should be sharing.
Right, because they're not able to accept certain things that to learn certain things at that time. So they're kind of like, you know, they're in first grade. You just graduated from college, and let them take their baby steps, and you do your thing, right?
Yeah. But I have a lot of
Okay.
questions from people. I just wanted to kind of say that. But one of the questions that I think is excellent is, does it take a lot of energy for them to send us these signs? Is that something that you could talk about?
Yep. The things that takes a lot of energy is if they're trying to send a sign, let's say to bring someone's energy up because they're having a bad day or they're in a certain state, and or they're angry or they're in a mood or something like that. I think one of the children in the book describes it as it's like murky. It's dark, not dark, but it's dense and murky to try to get through someone's energy if they just like were stuck in traffic and they had road rage or something like that. So that takes more effort. And then sometimes it'll just be like, it's just too hard because I'll come back and do it another time. So the lighter you are, or if you are relaxing, listening to music, or if you're gardening or you're cooking, great time to come through because you're not worrying, you're concentrating on whatever hobby or whatever thing you're doing. So it's easier for them to come in. And the little girl said that it's easy to come through to her dad when he's listening to music. So that was a great example of that. Easier for her energy. The other way, it's like, trying to break a brick wall with a sledgehammer, because of what's going on in our lives at that time.
That makes sense. Carla is saying, is it possible to see your child in a total stranger? My husband was stopped in his tracks and couldn't believe his eyes. He said he was a spitting image of our son, Michael, and thanked our son for giving him this sign, which was so needed.
Absolutely, and you'll hear voices too. You might be in the grocery store and you will hear a loved one on the next aisle over that will sound exactly like your child or a loved one, the same inflections of the way they talk, and you'll be like, they'll turn around with the person, does that sound like so-and-so? And you'll actually go over there. They're not there, but they would have manipulated that sound for you to hear that. Also, they can superimpose their appearance over people. And one of the mothers that helped me with some great information in this book on exit plans had that experience with her daughter, Carla, that she saw in a car when they were driving down a highway. And she looked over and she saw Carla driving. The car was only like 11 or 12, but she's in the car. And so she screams, she tells her husband to speed up. Oh my God, she's like 100% sure that's Carla. And when they pull up, it was some lady like in her 70s or something like that. Not even close, but she was so sure. And it happens because they can superimpose over someone else so that only you see it or only you hear it. Or sometimes if it's a shared sign like that, someone else will hear it or see it too. So that's not unusual. So yep, they can do that.
That's beautiful. Joanna asked, my question is this: how do the kids experience love now? I still want my son to feel loved and worry about him. He is only 17 and has just left us so suddenly. I responded obviously that he's with all of our kids right now, but could you go into that a little bit more about how they experience love?
They have their energy to connect with us is, see, when we're here and we still know that they're alive, but we miss the physical connection. On the other side, they can actually have a physical connection where they are. They can stand right next to us and they can tap into our energy field and feel all the emotions we have. So for them, it's a lot easier, the separation, because they can actually, have the physical body and all the emotions and stuff. While we're here and we have to use our mind or our instinct or our inner tuition to feel when they're around, but we don't have that physical body to grab onto. So I forgot what the question was because I'm half
So
there.
how do they experience love now, where they are, is what the question
So
was.
they experience love because they're in a place where they're surrounded with it. They have a better understanding of our purpose and who we are as a species, as a spiritual entity made of love. They can see our love over here at a very pure, higher vibration than when we are here. Okay, there's many levels of love on the physical plane that we have. Over there, it's magnified. So they can feel that love. They can feel our ups and downs. Put it this way, when you give a present to someone, a child at Christmas, don't you feel the love and excitement when they open it up, and you love that feeling of giving? Magnify that like 1,000 times. That's the way they feel when they can make us smile, or we can remember a funny story about them. Okay, they can feel that love and excitement just the way you can feel the love and excitement when you share your love with someone here.
That's beautiful. And I just want to add to that. I have spoken to other mediums who say that they can hug us and feel that hug. We get hugged by them, and sometimes we're able to experience it when we're open to it. I get hugged by Morgan all the time. So what we're missing, they are never missing. They are able to feel that love and that hug the way that they always have been. And we can also experience it if we are really open to it and raising our vibration to get to that point. But so
And
that's just,
accepting it.
and accepting it and realizing what it is too, which is really important. But
Another quick thing too is sometimes what they'll do too, if we're having a bad day, they will come close to us and try to lift our spirits, our energy field, to bring us up a little bit. So they have that ability too, which is great. It just shows they're still interacting with us throughout our lives, and they have that closer connection. And sometimes we can feel a brush on the hair, the side of our face, or something. When if you're really relaxed and you kind of let it go, you might be able to start to sense them. And there's different techniques you can use for them to let them know that they're around. And I'm getting all tingling, so I know there's a bunch of them around. So
there's a bunch of them around, that's for sure. I can feel them too. As I always say in these meetings, my ears start ringing, so I know that they're all around right now, which is wonderful. I absolutely love it. We have another question asking, why do the spirits not give signs every day? The signs seem to happen randomly and maybe once per month. Can you talk about that a little, Joe?
yeah. Well, the first thing is they don't want people to become dependent on the signs, because it can be like an addiction, and you can have a big drop off, and it can create instability in our bodies and our the way our bodies function physiologically. So they don't want to do something every day. They don't want us to rely on them to live our lives. They want us as our individual spiritual beings to do our gig, and they're going to support us. They're going to mentor us. They're going to hold our hand. They're going to encourage us, but they're not going to go out there and do it for us. So it's kind of like they'll step in and say hi, but we got to do the hard work.
That's beautiful. Okay, so I know that Melinda calls it transfiguration, when our child actually is able to look like the person looks like our child, and that's the name for it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's a question here, and I would love for you to answer this, because I think this might be one of the main ways now that this happens. Can spirit manipulate the Alexa device?
Oh yeah, actually, I had a lady at the Afterlife conference a couple of years ago, and I said, "Listen, I want that story." She woke up. Let me see, I remember. She woke up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Her mother came through to her on the Alexa and said something to her or something, and she was like, "What? What was that?" In the mother's voice, who was not around when she had passed before the Alexa was around and stuff. So as technology changes, and it's in one of the sign books, they talk how they learn and manipulate, and they will actually use the new technology, cell phones, Alexa, anything that we're using in this day and age, they will use. They've told me that they have stuff already that they're prepared to use that we have not begun to use in our societies right now. So it might be something, 5 years or 5 months or 10 years down the line, they might say, all right, we're going to use this particular, this particular machine or this particular avenue to come through, but we got to wait for them to create it and mass produce it or whatever. So, yeah, they're on board. They probably knew about Alexa long before, the guys who created it. So that's a yes.
Yes, that's beautiful. Carrie is saying, in answer to why we don't get a sign every single day, that they realized, and I think this is beautiful, that we need to go on and move and live our lives, and not necessarily just live constantly wanting to contact them and living in their lives, because they've got lots of stuff to do. So would you say that's true, that
Yeah.
maybe they like to be able to let us know that they're with us, but not necessarily, kind of like any kid, hang out with us all the time?
That's a great expression too, right? It's like, something, I'm here, and they can be here with us, but also with their friends or learning things on the other side. So they can be in multiple places. But they don't want us to rely upon that, because we have certain obligations or certain opportunities that we ourselves need to experience and go through. And they don't want to take away from that. Because if they're doing it every day and we're relying on them, they're going to start to say, oh, wait a minute, now I'm starting to influence my mom's path or my dad's path or my sister's path. I will support my sister. I'll be there and I'll talk to her and she can talk to me. But I can't, if I start doing this, she might not go back to school, or she might not go into medical field or research or social work or something like that. So he'll pull back. So they know what they're doing on the other side. Over here, we just kind of we have those blinders on sometimes, and we have to kind of go with faith that it's all the way it should be, and we should just keep going forward, because we're not allowed to know.
Well, I have another question that's very interesting. Sharifa is saying, can they hear us if we speak out loud to them, even if we are having a bad day or if we are at a lower vibration?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can speak to them out loud. You can speak to them in your mind. Just thinking about them will bring them closer. Not necessarily that they'll interact with you, but it'll still bring them closer. And they know when you're having a bad day. And sometimes they're just there for support. Like even on the earth plane, sometimes someone's had a bad day. Sometimes you just need to be with someone and let them talk without us talking, and that's what they do. They're there to support, and but they're not going to interact, because they're just there for support. But oh yeah, they can hear. That doesn't make any difference if we're kind of murky and dense. They can still definitely hear us. It's just we have the problem, hearing them.
Exactly. That's beautiful. So do they do the same kind of things over there that they do here, like playing tennis? Do you have any thoughts on that? This is one of the questions for
Yeah, what I learned from some of the children was that they're actually learning whatever they want. But I mean, there's a lot of children that learn music, they learn trades, they learn a lot of things, that science, whatever they're really interested in, they learn. If you notice, some people are born with natural abilities. That's where it comes from. And I just learned that in the last year. Some people are naturally good at architecture or engineering or working on cars, or they're naturally gifted with speech and speaking and writing. It's because they've been practicing it on the other side before they get here. So it's like second nature to them. And I'm like, oh, that's how they do it. Because some people are just like, oh, they do math like, oh, that's nothing. I had a roommate in college that was taking like calculus 7 or something like that. He wouldn't even study for exams, and he'd be acing them. He's like, ah, piece of cake. And I'm like, really? I'm struggling with flashcards, and he's doing calculus and stuff. But the kids tell us that they learn that stuff on the other side. They develop it on the other side. And sometimes they will bring that gift with them, and it will come out in this life. And sometimes it will lay dormant in this life too. It depends on their free will and what avenues pop up.
That's amazing. So it depends on the circumstances too, when they do
That's
have
right.
a chance to. But that's why we have child prodigies, I'm sure, and Mozart and
Exactly.
all of these other people. Tina is asking if she misses a sign from her child, will her child keep trying to give that sign until she's able to get it?
Yes, I mean, it depends on the reason why, if it's a bad timing, they'll just do it at a different time. If they give a sign and the person blows it off, they're only going to allow a couple of those, and then they're going to step back and they're going to be like, "Come on, mom, I've given you 3 signs." You're like, Maybe that's it. I don't think so." They're going to say, "Listen, yeah, okay, you'll get another one maybe 3 years." So it's kind of like if you're not willing to accept it and say, "Oh my God, thank you," always thank them. Got to be polite, and always thank them. Then the signs will build up, and you should get more of them. But if you just kind of push them away, and which is normal for us, but if you do it on a constant basis, the signs will stop, or they'll get very limited.
That's
Be
beautiful.
appreciative.
Yes, be appreciative. Say thank you, thank you, thank you all the time. So the Thomas J is saying the frequency of the spirit world seems much higher than ours. Is there a way other than meditation to be able to tune in better? For example, how do we become a better antenna?
I think one of the best ways is, I was talking to someone today when I was giving them a reading, and I always explain the process of what I go through. When I do a reading and I connect to the other side, it's like daydreaming. When you daydream, you kind of drift off, except you're having a conversation while you're daydreaming. That's where it gets a little tricky. But the same thing is like when sports figures get into that zone, they've actually kind of split a little bit. Runners get it sometime, or runners high, and that's kind of a split. I I believe in what's called active meditation. If you're doing a hobby, painting, cooking, mowing the lawn, out in your garden, something that gets your mind separated from the everyday activities will allow you to make a easier contact with the other side. So some people are like, "I can't meditate. My mind's always racing and stuff." That's fine. You don't have to do it that way. Do an active meditation, because when you're focused in on an activity, you've basically meditated. You've separated all the other junk out of your life because you're focusing on something. You're hyper focusing on it, and that's one way to open up that door to get insight from your guides and your loved ones about a particular question. So if you have a question you want to ask someone, or a guide on the other side, ask it. And while you're doing one of these things, it'll be easier for them to come through with the answer. Because sometimes things just pop in our head, because they know when we're open, it's like, "Okay, wait a minute, he's getting ready, he's open, bang," and then they'll send it. Okay. So
That's
hopefully that
beautiful.
was.
That was great. And as a matter of fact, Carrie had just answered in her own way too. And I think this is a beautiful answer too. And it goes along with what you're saying. She says, Thomas, I feel things like music are helpful, or exercise. Any way you cannot be focused on the other things or people, you're in a zone. So this is what she'd written right before you were talking about that. But you're right. For me, it's hiking and yoga. I mean, if I am hiking and not thinking about anything else, I get a lot of downloads from my kids, which is wonderful.
Sure.
But if I am concentrated on something and thinking, oh, it'd really be nice to have a sign from my kids, I'm not necessarily going to get a sign from my kids because I'm thinking too hard about it, maybe, right?
That's exactly right. Our mind is like a computer, and we get in front of ourselves, and it kind of like, it's we have to get out of our own head, as the expression says. But music is great.
Yeah.
Music's a very easy way for you to just to separate. Can happen very quickly. So, and nature, do nature. Nature is a wonderful natural healing ability that we need to access at every opportunity, because, like you said, you're hiking out in nature, and that information can easily come through.
Well, it's also nice sometimes, especially when you're on long cart rides, to connect that way, because you're kind of zoned out, concentrating on the road. And a lot of times I feel like my son Morgan's sitting in the seat beside me, and I talk to him and I interact with him. But sometimes when I'm not thinking about him, I'll get something from him as well. So just doing anything else and not, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Here's a good little practice you can do, because I was doing it today with the person I was reading, and I had the person's name, and I hadn't said the person's name yet, and I was doodling, and I'm not a doodler, but some mediums are doodle, and I'm doodling all around the name, and I know that came from spirit, and so sometimes if people are like, well, I don't know how to paint, and I don't know how to do this, just doodle, just take up something and it's something that's going to make you focus on a particular thing and not on, trying to figure something out, the analytical brain.
Well, doodling is similar to the channeled writing too, just kind of writing whatever comes to your mind without thinking too much about it, and then seeing maybe the messages that you're going to be able to get from your kids as well. I have a
Absolutely,
question.
that's a great name.
I have a question from Teresa, and I think it's a good one, and I just want you to reassure her. She's asking if they understand that we didn't understand the signs, or before we knew how to look for the signs. So I know you were saying that they're finally going to say, okay, I'll try again in 3 years, but that's not going to be the case if they understand that you are not
Right.
necessarily getting these things. They're going to keep trying, right?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. If we're ignorant about how the whole system works, they'll still try. And that's why we have a lot of signs that have been around for centuries, because they can rely on something like that, like a cardinal or a coin, because it is more widely known in our society. So they might not be able to come through with that specific sign that would really make you say, yep, that's definitely them. But they might try to use one of the everyday general signs to try to slowly acclimate you into understanding signs. It's kind of a natural way of bringing you in and teaching you.
That's beautiful. So Blanca is saying, and I think that this kind of goes to another group of signs, sometimes my cat looks at me in a way and it almost feels like it's my son. Could you speak to that? Is that something that you've heard of before?
In that particular situation, I think it's your cat. Because cats are like, they'll look at you like, your son is probably standing next to the cat, because they interact with animals. They'll actually play with the dogs, they'll play with the cats. They're really good at playing with cats, because because cats are like, they fall for it all the time. But the cat is not the son. That's what I'm trying to say. It's the cat, and he's being probably manipulated by the child. Probably has a thing of yarn in front of them and stuff, and playing with them. Because I have a lot of connections with children that do that. They play with the dogs. They love playing with the animals, and so they're there. The kids are there, but they're not the actual animal.
So yeah, Fern is saying, I always wonder when my dog is staring at something, but there is nothing there. I always ask him, do you see Natasha? And Carrie's saying, I am positive my cat can channel my daughter. And then
Yeah, they play with them.
Teresa saying, Blanca, I feel my dad through his donkey, which is really interesting. That's an unusual animal to have. What a fun animal to have. Let's see. And then
Listen, I had at
go
one
ahead.
of the conventions, one of the guys put up his hand and said, when his mother-in-law used to come through as a skunk, and it was in front of 200 people, and I'm like, really? I was like, everyone was hysterical. It's like, really, your mother-in-law? I said, did you get along with your mother-in-law? She goes, oh, he goes, I loved her. She was great. I said, well, she's got a great sense of humor if that's the way she comes through to you. But it worked. He knew when she was around. I'm like, out of all the animals you got to pick for a mother-in-law, you pick the skunk.
That's pretty rare too. It's hard to see skunks, I think. Sonia is saying, and this is another kind of type of signs. I keep seeing my son's car everywhere, same color and all, before he died. I had hardly seen it before he died, but now she sees it all the time. Is that something that you?
He's making you aware of those cars in your area. He can also manipulate some of those to have someone go down a certain street or something, without changing their particular path, without changing their direction in their life or something. It could be something simple, but usually it's to manipulate you to realize that, hey, look over there right now, to see something like that. But it's definitely, that's definitely a good sign.
Well,
He's got your number.
my son always sends red Toyota Tacoma trucks, and I always ask him to send them in threes. And my kids will be in the car, my other kids, and we'll count the first one, the second one, and the third one. And we never see them normally, but when we see them, and we know that Morgan is wanting to tell us something, and it's usually when we have a question, we see those three that arrive, which is wonderful.
There's a lady on here, I think tonight, Jen, who lost her son, Kevin, who's in the book. He taught me a lot about suicide. And if she wants to ask Kevin a question, she asks a question and Kevin answers on license plates.
That's wonderful.
And she takes pictures and sends them to me. I'm like, how does someone actually spell that out? And she is incredible with the license plates. Her and Kevin are like, they got it in sync. It's
we
wonderful.
have a lot of parents who are very, very in sync with license plates as well. Mabel Chan and her son Leo, he sends a lot of license plates to her, but all different kinds of signs as well. And it's so fun to read these books by a lot of these wonderful parents. Roseanne is on here. She wrote a book called Believe about her son Lee, who sends tons of signs to her as well. We've had a lot of other parents come and talk about the specific signs from their sons or daughters as well. Let's see. Valentina saying, my son always sends Nissans my way. I even say that I am stalked by them. We have one mom named Carol who actually spoke on one of the meetings. Were you on the meeting when she was in the grocery store, saw a very old friend of her son's? He came up to her and didn't even realize that her son had passed. And they talked, and he was saying how sorry he was. They went out into the parking lot. She sees her son's car, which was kind of a collector car, in the parking lot.
Right.
And this kid goes up and opens it. And she said, could you look in the trunk and see if there's a place where there's just a little bit of a ding on the inside of the trunk? He opens it. It was her son's car that he had purchased without even realizing it. So it was pretty amazing, the sign that she got. We actually had it in our newsletter as well. So yes,
But
cars are a big
that's a
one.
great example, you said, of how crazy good they can do some of these signs.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
I love
amazing.
that.
So let's see. Sometimes I see shadows going by when I am already in bed. Would you say that that's something that that they can do as well, Joe?
Yeah, I think, I think shadows generally, when we pick up something like that, it's our ability to recognize that there's different energy patterns going around us. Is it a specific loved one? Possibly. It could just be the energy patterns between this plane and the next plane too. But by being aware of it, it means you're being aware of other things that like such as signs and things like that. So it just shows that your higher level connections or your ability to perceive is there.
That's beautiful. Well, we only have a few more minutes. We have about 4 more minutes left. And I was wondering if you could leave us with some parting words, just some advice about how to get more signs from our kids, if you can.
I think the most important thing is to share the signs between like-minded people. And I know you guys always say, say their names and stuff. And I think that's very important because it personalizes the signs. Plus, everyone wants to be recognized for, for giving a gift, and these signs are gifts. So when you say, oh, my son Bill or Karen came through, my baby Karen came through and stuff like that, it personalizes it and it makes them feel nice on the other side And like you said earlier, Elizabeth, the high fives, you know what I mean? So you could say, you know, I got a sign, and you say the sign, but if you personalize the sign and say, oh, so-and-so or so-and-so, it doesn't have to be from your own child. It could be a friend's child, which is even more empowering, because you're bringing in that energy, you're bringing in that connection, that love, and it's just, so then you have two people on the other side who are high-fiving and saying, wow, your mom's talking about me, and her mom's talking about her, and it shows that you're connected here, and the kids are connected on the other side, and it just kind of it's like a snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So don't hold it in. Spread the, like I say, spread the love, baby. You know, move it around, and little bits of it will help someone somewhere that you don't even realize. You know,
Oh,
just a little piece of insights and a little bit of knowledge can really bring some peace to someone. So.
well, and I love your book, Always Connected for Those Who Have Lost Children. So I'm going to quickly type it in the chat box as well. But I truly appreciate you coming. And I know Irene has probably already made it so that people can unmute themselves as I'm
Yes.
typing this. Let me just quickly make sure
Thank
that
you, Joe.
people
That was
have
just
this.
wonderful.
Thank you so much. And
Yes.
everybody go ahead and say thank you and good night.
you.
And
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good night.
This is great.
Thank
you so
Night.
much.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you guys
Bye.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see
Thank you.
you.
Have a good
Appreciate
one. Bye-bye.
it. Take care.
What time
Thank you,
tomorrow?
guys.
Tomorrow is 12
Thank you.
o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Thank
It starts
you.
for Jenny Michelle. And then Irene has her meeting
Bless you.
4
Thank
o'clock.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Have a good night. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Have a nice
Thanks,
evening,
Joe.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.